Yo, what's up, guys, and welcome back. We have had a bit of a break, too long of a break from me, SkateCon, being a little bit burnt out, I ain't gonna lie. And we've got a really exciting one today, guys. We've got BKB Build Kit Boards. The guys in the scene producing really cool stuff about making DIY e-skate available to the masses, which I think is something we've lost a lot in recent years. So I'm gonna bring the team on, let them introduce ourselves, answer any questions you guys got, and talk about the company and what their mission is with the e-skate scene. Let's bring on. It's got Q and Jared. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having us.
No worries. Thank you guys for joining. Like I say, I am not putting this on. I'm not doing the YouTuber voice. I said in the background, I need a nice, good interview. I need a nice, good chat. So let's have a chat about BKB and talk more about the mission and what you guys are doing. And do you want to introduce yourself? We'll go left to right, start with you, Q. What's your engagement with BKB and where you're at, and a bit more about yourself, please.
All right, so hey guys, my name is Quentin, or Q. I'm the CEO at BKB. Been with BKB for just under, I think, 2 years now. Love it. I manage all the day-to-day interactions. I ship all the orders. I deal with all the customer service. And odds are, if you interact with us on Instagram, social media, anything like that, that's me communicating back with you. So nice to put a face to the name.
Cool.
Awesome. Hi, guys. My name is Jared. So I started BKB probably, 2017 or so.
It was August 2017, I think.
August. We know what we're doing. We have the timeline available.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I started BKB in August of 2017, and essentially have been along for the ride ever since. The kind of overarching goal and mission was to just make DIY easy and accessible, and we're kind of on our way to doing that now. So
that's really interesting. So one thing I couldn't find with you guys are really locked down, was your kind of first introduction with e-skate. Where's the fun? I always like to start with grassroots. Where did you guys get started? And basically, where did the idea with BKB start? And obviously, with Q joining the team later on, where's the kind of journey for each one of you? Like, where's the foundation with e-skate?
yeah, definitely. I can touch on mine quickly, and then Q can kind of jump in there. So I saw a video of Casey Neistat riding the original boosted board in I think it was 2016 or 2017, somewhere in there. And I was like, oh, these things are so cool. I want to go buy one. And then you look them up and they're like 1,600 or $2,000 or whatever they were when they came out. And you're just like, oh, I don't think I should spend that much money on an electric skateboard. So let's try to figure out how to build one. So I ended up doing that. And then after I built one, I got on the forums, and that kind of helped me build it a little bit. And then people were asking like, hey, can I buy some of the parts that you just made to build your own board? So I was like, oh, okay, I guess this could be a thing. So I started selling like orangutan wheel pulley adapters, and it just kind of went from there. So Casey was the intro, and then just kind of having fun and turning it into a business was an accident.
I find, just before you go into Q into the next bit, I want to ask a question about that. I've got a question. Do you feel like, due to the steep price curve of e-skate in those, fundamental days, early days, do you reckon it evolved the scene in so many more ways? Because during that time, it was like we had the Raptors, we had the boosted, the evolves, the in motion, I think was one of them as well. And it was like, due to the price curve, it was like people like yourself had this thing where it's like, I want to do this, and creating stuff organically created that kind of ability to get involved in e-skate in this way, and then, like I say, organically turned into that business kind of thing. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, if the e-skate scene had started with like a Meepo or a Chinese company that can mass manufacture affordable boards, the competition level would be much lower, just because it'd be impossible for them to compete. So because they're so expensive, that allowed other people to come in and compete, and then kind of have the industry today because of that.
Yeah, definitely. And what about you? How was your introduction with the scene? And obviously, the next thing with you, how did you kind of join the BKB family at this point?
Yeah, well, for me, it was a little bit of a different approach. I was very similar in seeing Casey Neistat and wanting an electric board from like super, super early on. Kind of like the ultimate toy as a kid. I mean, I was an outdoors kid. I wasn't a video games guy early on. I was always on a bike or a board or something when I was growing up. So I was an outdoorsy guy. I always wanted a board, but I couldn't afford one, unfortunately, when I was younger. And then evolve. You know, I got into sports, I got into track and field, and I went to college for track and field. I was a hurdler. And in the first race, I broke my hip. And so I went from being like a D1 5-star athlete to all the way to almost not being able to walk comfortably to class every day. So I needed a new way to get around. And as you know, we might talk about it later, I'm into cars. So I had a car that was super low. And every time I leave my driveway, it would scrape and go and break part of the car, most likely whenever I left my house. So I was like, I need a way to get around. So I got into e-skate, and it was something I always wanted. And thankfully, around that time, it started becoming more affordable, like Jared was talking about. So I was able to get a secondhand board on Facebook Marketplace for less than $300. I rode it around, and I just kind of kept evolving. And then I started looking into, I think I should build one myself. You know, I was a hands-on guy, especially with the cars, and I was a Lego kid. So I wanted to build my own board, and there was a guy in my neighborhood in college who had one. He let me check it out, try it out, and I really realized the difference between a built board and a DIY monster. You know, it's night and day. So I immediately went on my own journey of trying to figure out how I'm going to build it. This is while I was still in college in North Carolina. And at this point, I started researching VESC, ESCs, and just different platforms and things I can build the board off of. And I immediately became overwhelmed. It was way too much for my tiny little college boy brain to comprehend at the time. So I immediately started looking into kits. I was like, okay, someone definitely makes something that'll do what I need. And lo and behold, I come home, and right in my own backyard, there's BKB.
Nice.
It was just one of those things where I had a mutual connection to the company, and so I had a connection with Jared. Jared reached out to me sometime through our connection and was saying, hey, I need help shipping out some boards. This is right when my bar was really in its heyday, I'd say. And I came over, started helping out with the kits, and Jared was looking to get into other ventures, and I said, hey, I think I can really make an impact here, make a difference. I just got a degree in entrepreneurship. Why don't I run the business side? You run the side that you're really good at, which is designing and building boards. And from there on, we kind of just created a partnership and went from there. So that's really how I got my start and how I got involved with BKB.
So fundamentally with BKB, and I suppose this is for Jared especially, with the kits, is it always going to be functioning around doing kits for the consumer? So always have something which is part of educating, developing the DIY market specifically?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things that makes the company unique, and it's also kind of hard to duplicate, especially from a company that's overseas in Asia, just because they don't have the support or kind of expertise and to do something this niche and specific. So it's kind of a good it's a good market for BKB. So it's definitely going to be something that we stick into.
That's cool, because I think it's one thing as well. Like, I used to watch the journey, I suppose, back in the day with, like I said, I'll bring it back here with eSkate Hub, Nate, I believe it's Nate, if that was correctly. Yep. And watching that thing, I thought it was really good opportunity, because I feel like, obviously, we're talking about the heritage of eSkate and limitations pushing people to be more DIY focused. And obviously the other element of modern DIY is going bananas, stooge race, hyperboards and all that stuff, and going really, really fast. So I feel like having this fundamentally an opportunity for a learning experience for people, when people have to have ownership of the boards, is, I suppose, really, really important. And I feel like this is going to be harder and harder to have in the scene, having that opportunity to develop, to learn at an accessible development at this point, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the big things at EskateCon, and Dallas can kind of attest to this. He just made the video about his stooge board he just reviewed. But he started with BKB. His first intro to DIY was there, and we had a bunch of people coming up, and they'd be like, "Oh, I started with your kit 3 years ago or 4 years ago," and now they're in the like the advanced class of EskateCon, racing a stooge board that's much more advanced and technically capable and requires different maintenance and different protocols. But it's a good intro to get their foot in the door, and I think it's kind of underestimated sometimes in the community, is like you got to get them a way in before they grow in the whole thing. So
yeah, I totally agree, and I think that it's one thing that I really admire about the kit element, because I feel like I said, as more and more things become more accessible, more of I could buy Sanks off the shelf, like the standard, like you said before, we've had the Meepo boards back in the day, and like the other boards out there, the standard is nowhere near the level. Would you see a Meepo board collaborating with Stooge back in the day? You wouldn't even comprehend stuff like that. But like now, I think it's really important that if you're part of that building process, you know how things work, and it's a chance to educate yourself and really make your own kits. So one of the things that you guys have, you obviously have the short boards and the long boards. Is it always going to be like a short board kit and like a long board kit going forward, or would you kind of extend into like the more advanced stuff as well? Would that be something that you guys would look into doing in the future?
Yeah, so I can kind of give my point of view. I think Q and I may have two different point of views here, which might be cool to kind of see the internal side of things. But my side of thing is we found a niche that we're kind of good at. So it's nice to stick to that. But of course, there's always opportunity, and we kind of blend that between our upgrade kits and things like that. But I don't see something going crazy and trying to compete with Stooge or something similar to that. But
so, Q, what's your opinion on that? I feel like there was an open door for a confrontation there. Let's go for it.
I don't know. I mean, I would definitely agree that I think we have our own niche right now, which is DIY and educating people as much as we can through DIY, and kind of like you guys were saying, just kind of being like the first platform or the first step on the staircase that is DIY and fully building something crazy like that. I think I see BKB going in a direction where we can bring DIY into being more practical into people's lives. Maybe not so much focusing on racing, but more focusing on having DIY and having a board in your life is sort of like a point where it doesn't have to be a big expense like it used to be, and it can be something that actually helps you and serves you well. Like with the rail core system, we've really started to focus on what we can do with that system outside of just boards, and sort of using that same battery technology on other platforms. If you go to shop, there'll be a whole tab underneath it.
Let's go there then. Yeah, be better.
So with rail core, we're just trying to try to make that as universal as possible. So we started selling the empty ESC cases because we knew people were looking for 18S setups, which we weren't making. We're sticking to 12S right now because 18S really isn't used in outside of race setups as far as boards go right now. People are typically sticking to 12S because that gives you all the power and range you need traditionally. We're selling the empty cases so people can use our platforms to almost grow and keep modifying. We try to keep everything as modular as possible, so you could make a race setup out of it. I know eSkate Hustle actually made a rail core race setup with mad eSkate wheels, long Stooge race trucks. It was kind of like a hodgepodge of different manufacturers making their own deck, making their own board. So I see it being as one of those things where you can kind of use our platforms to get into it and continuously evolve into something that you want it to be. So I don't necessarily see us making specific products. I see us making more support materials to continue your own growth through our stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know if this was the build you was referring to. Was this the one you was referring to? Or is this one of them?
Actually on our Instagram, if you'd like, I can send it to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think you've got control as well, so you can take it as well. But I suppose it's I think open source eSkate is really, really important. I feel like there's been a lot of, I suppose, in the last, with the heritage of eSkate, in the last 4 years, there was this kind of push of locking down, mainstream companies locking down their systems and not allowing, even in UK, we had companies, I'm not going to, name shame this thing, but we had companies in UK where they wouldn't sell you an ESC, they wouldn't sell you certain bits that you could do to your board yourself, which I think there's a fear of sharing. And I think one thing, I don't know about you, I came back from eSkateCon realizing is if we lock ourselves down, we're unnecessarily competing with ourselves. And if you, like I said, you've got this rail core design, and then it gives you an opportunity to use that component with different wheels, different trucks and hubs as part of the system, then collectively, I suppose we all grow as a unit.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what we try to do with our boards now. We don't try to lock anybody into our systems. Railcore is fully accessible and usable with any ESC type. All you need to do is mount the rail and plug in an XT90 and it works. So that's something that we kind of try and not necessarily focus on, but we definitely put an emphasis on that. We're not trying to, if you get a BKB board, you don't have to stay with BKB. You can continue to evolve and build it however you like, or even just take the parts off and use the deck for a completely different build. We're not trying to lock anybody in. And we understand from a consumer perspective, you got to keep in mind, we both came into this game wanting wanting these boards for ourselves. So we kind of come at it not from a perspective of, okay, we're a business, we're trying to sell as many boards. We're coming at it from a perspective of, we were in the position of not owning or being able to create these boards. We want to provide the best value and the best opportunity to those actually buying them, because that's what we wanted as consumers. And we understand that it's possible. It's just, it takes a little bit of a different form. So the DIY form is how we really found to do it. We save cost because you don't have to pay for someone else to assemble it yourself. Learn how to work on the board, you learn how to repair it, and just kind of worked out that way.
So as far as a couple of questions about the railcore design, is it the idea to like have a modular design? Can you obviously have the shells, you can buy them as completes as well. So is it very much fundamentally you just snap it on a battery? Obviously you've done your ESC, you've done the program and stuff like that, but potentially is it just you just whack on a new battery and that's the versatility of the system?
Yeah, exactly. So the versatility is in not only putting on a new battery, but it being able to add them in a row. So if you need to fly, you just unclip the 12S1 piece, you throw them in your backpack, and then you can fly. And then when you get there, you have a larger battery, just to extend the range. And then also it's just much more practical because then you can take the entire system off, put it onto a bigger skateboard or smaller skateboard. We have a Razor electric bike, so you can move the batteries throughout the systems.
So there's a goal kind of using the railcore system with adapting it for whatever you need. So in a bit like, in a way, what Shred lights are doing with their lights, but in a battery system. So if you've got potentially, you could have multiple boards with different with all the railcord and moving the battery amongst the system.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal.
Yeah. So currently I'm using 12S2Ps, so the larger battery case that we have here. I'm using these on my builds right now, so I obviously have shortboard, longboard running on these. I also have a dirt bike that does like 55 miles an hour and goes like 40 miles of range. And I also have a 2 Swift running on these same batteries. Soon there's going to be a drift cart. Soon there's going to be a go-kart. I mean, it's really just whatever you can build, you can use. And the mounting system just makes it super easy to kind of quickly put it onto anything. So. Oh yeah, that's Leslie from the Downtowner Motel. A lot of EskateCon guys might recognize her. That's her holding her board, and that's the Razor running the same batteries that I was just holding.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know of any other system in our scene besides obviously having lipos and hot swapping between penny cases where you can have the versatility. Because I know for me, obviously flexibility is really great, and I'm very fortunate to have more than one board. So if you've got a long range big board, you can, I suppose, adapt it to the needs of what you need. So for example, if you're going to pop shops and you could have a long board deck, but you could take off, I suppose, 2 of the railcord batteries, and then you have the singular one, reducing the weight and fit for purpose rides. And I don't think that's one thing that's talked about in this scene enough, where the board is fit for purpose enough. People just want max speed, max range, and that stuff. But for example, known for me in my channel, when I've reviewed stuff like a bio board or a Cali or stuff like that, taking that thing to the grocery shop sucks. So we don't talk about I suppose if you have a board that you can adapt for your needs, I suppose is a very special thing to have for sure.
Right. A lot of people disregard or forget how important weight and stuff like that is when living with a board, not riding a board, living with a board. A lot of people who use boards walk up staircases to get their board back into their places. A lot of people can't. I mean, boards with full suspension are amazing, and I got to ride so many of them at EskateCon, and it was one of those things that was just like a wow experience. But not everybody has the ability to bring those into a garage or a shop or something like that. So like you were saying, the ability to just take off. I mean, one of these batteries, they're not super heavy. I think the heaviest is like 4 pounds. But taking off, you can put 3 of these on a board. If you take off 8 pounds, that makes a big difference in carrying something up a flight of stairs, especially when it's a little bit awkward, cold and such. So yeah,
in my house, me and my girlfriend have a bit of a laugh where she knows what I'm taking by the noises I make as I'm carrying the thing out the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is the irony. But yeah, I think it's one thing just for me, like always thinking about the next thing. Obviously, sky's the limit with how many packs and charging and stuff like that. Is there any way to would you guys consider having like a charging hub for the packs? So, for example, say if you're doing endurance, long distance riding, I'm obviously a fan of that. I've done some big rides myself, but having like a modular system where you could put it in like a charging dock and having multiple batteries charging, and they'd be able to hot swap between rides. Is that something you guys have, or like how do you charge the batteries? Do you charge them on the board? How does that work?
We can do you one better and remove the need for an extra part. So you can literally take off the batteries, keep them all connected to each other, and plug in the charger in the end, and it'll charge the entire chain down the line.
Wow! And that's part of it. Just works as part of the system. Just literally just put the XD90 together all the way along and just go bang, and it'll charge the whole way.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's really, really big. Because the thing is, as well, like for me, I did a coast to coast ride, one side of the country to the other with the Cali XR, biggest battery that we had at the time in mainstream. But having something that could be on a car in front of you, and then you just have it charging ready for you, and you just hot swap in it. That's mad. And also, I suppose another thing is in a racing scene as well. We talk about obviously the development and the future of e-skate with these race boards coming out, stuff like that. If you had your system as part of that, you could have packs ready for you, pop them off, and then off you go again. So really a lot of things to think about.
Electric's one of those things where in motorsports, at least, they were so concerned with if you're about to go out on a race, they give you as little fuel as possible because they want the car to be as light as possible. And batteries, we don't really have to deal with that. So it's really just you want to have that most amount of charge in your pack as possible. So with Railcore, I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people. You can do Railcore easily as a top mount. As most race boards have a top mount, center enclosure or whatever. You can easily just pop a quick battery on there and have that as your race board, and just have two batteries. One's charging while you're racing, or just topping off. I mean, it's really not too bad. And races are not long at all, so it'd be a really, really good quick fix if you're doing multiple classes on the same board or something of the sort. So it would help a lot.
Yeah, and I suppose that's another thing to think about is obviously you guys ship in with 12S series. You could also have your setup with your DIY setup with the framework you're using, having your higher voltage setups ready to go. And I just want to throw a thing here for Dallas, like the education you guys are delivering through the scene is great. And I suppose holding those values is really, really, really important. Because to be honest with you, at this point, and talking about it, M-Boards was the closest thing that you guys were working with as the same kind of message going there, and they do only complete boards now, which I feel like they've lost a bit, in my opinion. I feel like having an opportunity to maybe buy something and do the assembly yourself, I think is obviously great having a product and stuff like that, but keeping that message of being able to, if you want to have a chance to learn, I think is really, really, really important. So I think that's really great.
Same with, sorry to cut you off, Tom, but I just want to say also DIY electric skateboards on Instagram. They were another great DIY company, but I think they've also turned to production model as well, and they've started doing propulsion, I believe. So it's just one of those things where DIY is getting harder and harder, I think, to get all in one. It's just a headache for some people who don't know. It's like if you don't know how you're supposed to get into it, and that's where we kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, accessibility is really, really great. But obviously, you guys don't just do. Obviously, doing the kits extends not just on the Railcore system. Obviously, you guys were, in my opinion, one thing I was preaching out for years is contact patches of wheels. And why have we been like this for so long?
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And if I remember, your wheels were like incredibly hard to get hold of for a while as well, if I remember correctly. There was the first batches were like really tricky. I've got one here from James here talking about your wheels here, but I think having a flat, why do we have round contact patches? Like, what is that about? Like, obviously, it's just so much better having a flat surface for sure.
It's just crazy when I find it nuts how it's one of those things where it's real world physics. Like it's just natural. More contact patch equals more grip. Like Jared, I want to hear your thoughts on this a little bit more because you're the one who designed and kind of were the behind the scenes of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to say it was the first flat contact patch tire, but
it was one of the early adapters for sure.
I think it was like the first 6 inch. It was definitely the first 6 inch. I think there was maybe like an 8 or 9 or something like that was flat for more specialty purpose. But it was definitely an early adopter. And it was just one of the things that I would ride an AT board and then I would get off of it and I would be like, okay, like this doesn't make sense. And then you just look at it and okay, how do you solve this? And then literally just making a flat contact patch. So it's just making sure there's enough volume to cover the molds and going from there.
Yeah, I thought they're really, really, really cool wheels and stuff like that. So how long have they been trading for at this point? Obviously, they're still, I said they're relatively new still. They've been around for a while though, haven't they?
Yeah, I think 2 years or so, maybe. At
We're
this
on our
point.
version 2 of the tire now.
Yeah.
So the first version was amazing. All we did was went with a little bit of a stickier, harder compound on the rubber, and then we upgraded the tubes a little bit, just because we were having a little bit of not a leaky tube issue, but some people were experiencing that. So we just kind of solved that all together. And I feel like a lot of people are actually buying our tubes now to use with Hodas or the new M Novas or whatever, because our tubes have been honestly awesome ever since we upgraded them. But what did we change anything else to it? Oh, tubeless capable, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too many people using that, but it's definitely there in the future when enough 6-inch tubeless rims come out.
Yeah.
So I want to ask that because I feel like recently, so we are getting more and more tubeless wheels coming along. So how does that work with? Do you want to explain to people how does that work with? What makes the difference? Obviously, it's no inner tube, but how does that work for someone?
Yeah. So, are you talking about how it physically works, like with a
how is it more beneficial? What's the benefit of having a tubeless tire, and like how would that work for someone, basically?
Yeah. So the benefits are it's easier to balance the wheel. The wheel's just more balanced because you don't have that other additional weight. It's also lighter, and then you don't have to deal with flats. So a lot of the time when you do get a flat, it's not necessarily from a puncture; it's from the tube like spinning inside of the hub. So that eliminates that whole issue, and then the only issue that you have is when there's like a major puncture.
Okay. Cool. So guys, just a quick one. Jared is actually jumping off. He actually has got to go to unfortunately another meeting. So if you have any questions specifically to Jared, please put them in now before we go, because we've only got a little bit of time before he's on another meeting. So appreciate you spending time with us today.
Of course.
I'd also add with the tires, we did a really thick or stiff sidewall, which helped a lot with the flats. That was one thing that obviously with some tube issues in the beginning, we realized, okay, flats are something that the tire needs to be able to survive. And that's not always the case with some tires, but these have a real stiff sidewall where you can probably ride anywhere below 20 miles an hour still comfortably. If you do get a leaky tube, you'll be fine. So won't keep you stranded, which is nice.
No, I think that's really, really important. And they're very aggressive on the tread as well, I've noticed as well. Let me just whack them up. So how are they with wearing as such compared to obviously having a flat contact patch? Is it more evenly because obviously a lot of wheels they break in the middle and then they're a wasted tire at that point. Are they more long lasting having that flatter contact patch?
Yeah, so we actually had somebody come up to us and say that the tires last too long and it's bad for business at EskateCon, which I thought was funny. So it's one of the things where it's just all in the compound. A lot of people understate that. Is a lot of work went into getting the formula right, and then from there you can have good grip, but also not sacrifice the quality and the of the tire. So they last way too long. I don't think I've ever changed a set, but we have somebody, I think they did almost 1,000 miles on them and they're still kicking. So
cool. Right, what I'll do, and I'll let you jump off now because I want you to have a minute between the next one, so I appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining the stream, and then maybe you can catch up later with whatever you missed later on when you in your downtime. So thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, great chatting. Have a good one.
See you, Jerry.
Bye.
There you go. So I've got a question here from Dallas, actually. Do you think they'll consider ever looking at different sizes, widths, taller, or anything like that? Or considering obviously you've been trading them for a while, would there be any future development, different wheel configurations?
Yeah, so it's something we thought about for sure. At EskateCon, we had a lot of requests for it. I'm not even sure we might have talked about it, Dallas, honestly. There were so many people just coming up and asking, like, oh, I love your tires, but I need them in an 8-inch or a 7-inch. Honestly, it really just comes down to cost. At the end of the day, we need to create an entire new mold to create a 7 or 8-inch tire. And it costs a lot of money. So it's one of those things where we need to have a really, really good amount of want for people. And it seems like there's almost a mixed bag with everything we get requested from. So it's maybe 25% say 7-inch, maybe 40% say 8-inch. Maybe another 30%, say wider tires like the Hurricanes have or something like that. So there's always everybody always wants something different. We found that 6-inch is kind of the best general size to kind of satisfy most needs. I mean, they were doing pretty well on the track at EskateCon as well, I heard. So it's just one of those things where we need to have a little bit more of a demand for it for us to make it. But if it's there, we'll totally do it. I mean, the only thing holding us back is just having people asking for it. So we got a good amount of asks, but it wasn't anything super consistent to the point where we were going to invest a bunch of money into it as of right now.
So I suppose at this point now, obviously you're looking at, I suppose you talked about before about your next level of remotes. I suppose this would be something worth considering after this next stage. Oh, I've gone. What? I died.
You turn the lights off or something, dude. I don't know.
No. On. Why is it on? Off.
Yeah, I mean the new level of Void or the new Voyager that we're working on is just we're just trying to make it as universally applicable as possible. Jared designed it in mind with it being like the most ergonomic e-skate controller out there. So he kind of noticed with what he was testing with like the VX1, the VX2, the Hoyt Clock, just kind of everything. Everything was slightly uncomfortable in your hand in one way or another, or just didn't work perfectly in his opinion. So we kind of went with a tried and true similar design as the like the Nintendo Wii that has a nunchuck. We use the same design as far as the ergonomics of that, but we're fully redesigning the internals. We posted yesterday on our Instagram about all the PCBs and everything that's getting developed. But it's almost going to be a brand new remote from the ground up. It'll support more than just VESC based. It'll do PPM, it'll do UART, it'll do CAN. It's really we're gonna try and make it work with almost any kind of board, not even VESC. As of right now, we're looking at a price point around $65 to $70, fully made out the door, ready to go. Honestly, the remote had a lot of support, but it was surprising, Tom. Most of the people who are using the remote nowadays are one-wheelers.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Sorry, I'm just having another bit of fun here. Technical nightmare. I'm going to be 10 seconds. I'm going to still be here. I'm just going to be a bit. Well, actually, wait. I'm going to have to. Just give me 10 seconds.
No problem.
Right,
but yeah, VESC One Wheel is one of those things where it kind of came out of the blue for us. Obviously, we knew about it, but we didn't expect the remote to take off as it did. Now, obviously, part of the reason the remote was doing well was it was on sale at the time, and people just kind of gobbled up the pricing. But through testing and through working with some of the developers at the Float Life and talking to them about just the overall journey of the Voyager, they really do believe it's one of those remotes that could make a big difference in the racing scene. So this development is going to kind of support that. It's going to be fully, it's using ListVM for the display. It's going to be fully customizable through open source. So you can customize the display to display whatever information, temps, duty cycle, whatever you want on the screen itself. So it'll be almost like the board's fully customizable, fully DIY based. You can kind of do whatever you need to have displayed on there.
Yeah, of course. I was actually recently at a One Wheel event. They were talking about the incorporation for obviously the One Wheel community, which preach to hate remotes, which I don't I suppose, which one thing is, I'm surprised that they're pushing more. But I just want to highlight the reason why I spoke to them and they were like, why they would want to have that is with the VESC systems to talk about angles of
Moat tilt.
One Wheel. Yeah, Moat tilt, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people are using ours for that. There's actually a fun game that people play when a bunch of one-wheelers get together and party where they have someone hop on a wheel and everybody holds a remote. You don't know who's connected, and they all just move the stick around. You have to stay on it like it's like a mechanical bull or something like that. It's lots of fun, but it sounds like it would hurt a lot, and I haven't tried it yet. So I'll leave it up to them. It's just one of those things where it unlocks a lot of possibilities. Like if you see a curb that you probably would hit the nose on or the front lip on a one wheel, if you pull the remote back, you're able to kind of tilt the wheel back and hop on it and almost jump anything. So it makes a huge difference, especially in the racing scene, like the off-road racing scene.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's wild now. Like I said, I was stunned to see one wheelers. Like, why would you want to incorporate that into your right? And obviously, once again, the evolution of the communities with obviously the tilt and stuff like that. I was going to try and bring up one. Actually, I think it's my last video that I did, and to show the importance of having that versatility for remotes for like banks and jumps. Let me just bring it here actually.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. Especially with some of the issues that One Wheels were having in the past with like nose diving and just stuff like that. I think the Vesk, whether you're using a remote or not. Oh, is that Dirt Surfers? Where is that? Oh no, it's UK.
This is one of the UK events that I covered. This was actually the last video I did, but we there's a lot of features, and I think that's one thing interesting about the One Wheel community, having these features and the banks and the jumps and the clearance of stuff like that. So, for example, here's a good practical application for remote where you could tilt the angle for this obstacle and then bring it back down. Like the clearance is nothing there, but you could adapt your ride style for these features using incorporated remote. So it's another evolution of actually bringing remotes to another demographic that you would never used it before.
Oh, totally. And I have to shout out Shredfest or Shredbill or Billy Shredder on Instagram. He is one of the gnarliest guys I've ever seen on a One Wheel. All he does is build them, break them, and then build them up again and break them again. He just builds dirt jumps in his, I don't know if it's his house or a farm near him or what it is, but he just wrecks the boards to complete oblivion. I can share the link with you if you want to see it. But he's just one of those guys that really shows like what Vesk One Wheel is capable of, and not just through racing or through riding in a normal straight line. He really almost brings like a, for lack of a better term, a steez to it. Like like he really has like a flair of how he rides that just kind of.
I think but you can whack it in the private chat and then on here, then I can, or just do it on Instagram and I'll bring it up. So let me just check this out 1 second. So another thing as well, the Voyager remote's been out a while. So because I know one thing that was wild for me back in the day when I first saw it was having a remote that goes in all directions. So what's the benefit of that in the e-skate sense?
So contrary to popular belief, it doesn't go in all directions from the factory. It's one of those things where we actually put a throttle lock on it. So if I try to move it to the right and left, it kind of just won't. But if I go up and down, it will. So we have a y-axis throttle lock on it, so it'll only go up and down. Personally, I take it off on that. It's just a literal metal piece that lets the stick only go up and down. You can take it off if you want and make it go all directions. I like it to go all directions personally because I'm just weird like that. And I like to almost push to the right and then sort of almost like edge up to the middle and sort of ease into the throttle when I'm going around turns. Maybe it's because I was like a racing sim video game guy or something.
But I suppose if you do in all directions, like when you're throttling, you can go up and down.
Right.
But I suppose if you go left and right, you can also tease the braking and the accelerating to a whole nother strength, I suppose, as well.
It's not like a full back to brake, forward to move. If you're going to the right a little bit, it's just a little micro adjustment to make a small change in a turn, which, as you know, in racing, little micro adjustments can make the biggest difference whether or not you're falling or you're taking off in first. I'd say that. But, I mean, honestly, a lot of people are using remotes for things we weren't ready for. So I know 2 people that have actually used this remote on a 4-wheel drive board, dual Vesk, that can do tank turning now. And another company that's doing a Trax vehicle that uses the same remote, and they use that for disabled people to go off-roading. So they're making a wheelchair that has tracks on it, and they're able to use this remote to almost seamlessly tell the board or the tracks or whatever to go because it can go right and left, up and down. And it works with Vesk, which is what it's based on.
That's cool. So obviously bring it back to the building element as well. Let me just bring it back to here 1 second before I go forward. What's the kind of like ways people have used these builds fundamentally and have evolved over the years? Like, what things have you seen people do that has adapted BKB going forward? Like, we've seen people do batteries in this way or configurations in that way, in which is evolve the kits going forward.
Yeah, so I think, well, first off, with the design of the kit, we tried to make all the parts as easy to understand visually as possible, and then also as clean visually as possible. So belt driven, we thought was just the easiest to understand. HUD motors are confusing for those who don't understand it. Also brings in a whole nother situation of trucks, and then it changes your modularity of everything. We wanted to keep everything as simple as possible. So we're focused on modularity and then also just ease of assembly, because we knew most of the people who were, look at Jared's haircut in this, it's so different. We're thinking about it. People who are going to be building these boards aren't people like you and I who have experience now building. So it needs to be as simple and easy as possible. With this specific kit, I mean, we use a lot of the similar parts. As far as batteries go, we tried to stick as tried and true as possible. And then we also just we always use obviously the best BMS and safety equipment that we can when it comes to regulating anything. We were on VESC. That was a big hot topic that people were kind of griping on with the new kits, was moving away from VESC as our standard ESC. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but
was that what the original? Yeah, because you've changed into. I suppose it's evolved recently, isn't it?
Yeah. So we used to offer all of our boards with our own ESC called the Zenith ESC, and while that was amazing, and VESC obviously will never be replaced by a standard PPM or whatever you want to call it, ESC. It's one of those things where, for all the boards that we were selling to people for our DIYers and our riders of just BKB duos and Tatos, the amount of people actually using our ESC or changing the tune within the VESC or adjusting it was less than 10%. It was one of those things where, unfortunately, if you work with VESC, you kind of know they can be sporadically unreliable at times, and just kind of pop up an issue here and there, just sort of a random thing. And we need something more reliable for those who weren't necessarily working on the boards. So now we have as an option where you can upgrade to VESC if you want to, but it comes standard. It's just a basic Ling Yi ESC with a basic VX1 type remote with telemetry and all that still. So it still tracks everything. It's just you won't have the pre-program or the reprogrammable ESC unless you upgrade to it, which I think is, personally, I think it's okay because most of our people weren't using it. We did get a lot of backlash from those in the community who are already at the level of DIY and doing VESC at their own pace. But I kind of realized it kind of got to me in the beginning. I'll be honest with you, like just seeing like, oh, this is the wrong direction. You're making a huge mistake. People were literally, people I talked to in person were literally commenting on my page, like, you just messed up so bad. And it obviously discouraged me a little bit. But just seeing how it's going now, I think it's amazing. And I think we made a decent decision, honestly. Not getting away from VESC, but just offering two options, one no and one yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it gives you. I suppose one thing to consider when you're looking at your kit is what is your next stage from there. It's almost future proofing. I think is a really important factor. So if you looked at getting your investment originally, getting your kit, and this is what it's going to be, and you've got the ES. And there's one thing I've said about, for example, with the kit you get. If you have your option of the 18S at the box and you build a 12S standard board to build with, you can use this, it's future proof, and you can use these components with other builds going forward.
Right. It's one of those things where it's all recyclable. It's, say you build a board and you're like, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like how the remote feels. I don't like how the ESC feels. I don't like how the tires feel. The wheels, the trucks, literally anything, the bushings, it's all swappable. And it's all stuff you don't have to come to us for. You can go wherever you want, get your preferred manufacturer, and make the board as you want. We're just trying to give you the option to do it yourself. And without all the headache and the grit of having to stay up late at night, understanding what VESC is and doing the research on every little part of it. I mean, I keep on bringing up VESC. That's not the only thing that's a headache, of course. Batteries, compatibility with different ESCs and the ESCs and how they operate with the motors. And it's one of those things where it's easy to talk about when you're in the space, but then when you're trying to build it yourself and you don't know, it's very overwhelming. We've all been there at one point. So
yeah, there's one thing I know that I've been doing Escape for a long time, but one thing I'm lacking is the understanding and knowledge of the DIY element. I suppose you guys obviously have a series of assembling your boards. So what is the estimated time for an average consumer to do a full build assembly, do you find then?
So honestly, I think the boards got a little bit easier to assemble with the introduction of Railcore. As of right now, I think obviously it depends on your skill level and your knowledge. But I think you could build a board without any knowledge of anything that comes with the board. You can build the board in 2 hours or less. I think if you know what you're talking about and you can pick out like, oh, this is that, and just sort of name parts, I think you could build it in an hour and a half. And I think if you have experience like you do, I think you could build it in less than an hour. It's one of those things where I actually had an intern this past year. He was a high schooler. He was looking to be a mechanical engineer, and he came into the he introduced himself to us at Eastgate, or Electrify Expo, not Eastgate. If you're familiar. And it was amazing. We were one of 2 Eastgate companies. It was us and 2 Swift there. And he came up to us and he was like, I've never tried an Eastgate board. I want to try one. I said, try it out. And he said, I have an internship. I'd be interested in doing it with y'all. He said, send me an email. And we ended up connecting. When he came in, he knew nothing about Eastgate. I kind of did like a baseline quiz when he got in, like, what do you think this is? What do you think this is? I mean, obviously he knew what a wheel and a bearing was, but he had no clue what an ESC was. He had no clue how a motor worked, how batteries worked, what 12S2P even meant. And by the end of it, I said, okay, I'm going to put up a time lapse. I'm going to have you build a board, no instructions, no questions. And he built the entire board in about 50 minutes. And at the end of it, I gave it to him as a gift, just as like a thank you for working for us, for helping us out. But it's really not too difficult. I mean, it comes with everything difficult, almost ready to go. The ESC and the battery are set in their enclosures. Yeah, that's him. That's Sabert. And you can see he has a broken wrist. That is not from me. One wheel. One wheel. He had the nosedives. He had the nosedive happen on him. It was not me. So if you're his mom, his dad, whatever, don't come to me.
That's funny.
It's just one of those things where he was a great person for us. When he was with us while Railcore was coming out, and it was super, super helpful because he was giving us an outside perspective. What should we be saying that people don't know? What's the questions that someone who doesn't know would ask? And it kind of gave us that outside perspective to know, okay, this is important, this isn't important. And he was by my side when I was creating the tutorial to build the Duo and the Tato for this generation. He was by my side saying, I said, what should the step be on this? And he would talk me through how he would do it, and I would put it into my words. And then he would read it over and say, does this make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. So having that outside perspective was so valuable. But also just showed me like what's difficult, what's understandable, what's not. Gave me a really good insight as to what I should be doing and teaching.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One thing actually that I've never discussed actually in Eastgate Scene, I actually was a primary school teacher for 5 years actually. So I've got a question for you, just as an ex-educator, I suppose, and that's would you ever be interested on going to local high schools or anything like that and talking and showing people this is what we do, this is how it works, and potentially doing lectures and stuff like that? Because of that, I suppose fundamentally goes down to what BKB is about, an educational tool for Eastgate.
So we haven't really been promoting it much or been talking about it much, but we actually are doing that. As of right now, we're not in any high schools, but we are in 2 different colleges. So Arizona State University has one of the better engineering schools in the entire country. And their intro to engineering course uses our kits to sort of give them a baseline of how electric vehicles work, and then also get them into the engineering or product engineering mindset of making something in real life and something that can actually be not theoretical, something physical. So something that I'm sure you learned in school, and I'm sure you I don't know if this is something you necessarily talk to some primary school kids about, but the difference between an idea and the difference between reality, especially when you're getting into engineering and the college age classes. A lot of people can think of a cool idea. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if a spaceship had wheels and it could also float? I mean, that's an awesome idea, but you need to design it. It needs to work. So they kind of use our skateboards as a way to get these kids to thinking into real world applications. What could be the best vehicle for a college student to have to get around? What could be best for someone in a tight city space in China or something like that to get to and from work affordably? So it's one of those things where it kind of puts them in a different mindset. We also just sent out 30 Railcore kits to California, to a school in Santa Barbara. One of our sponsored riders, Goofy Nate, got us in contact with the school over there, and they're doing a program both during the school year for their students and then also over the summer for kids who are underprivileged, to give them an option to experience higher education, but also do it in a way where it's fun and engaging. It's not just like, okay, here's social studies, here's math, here's English. It's here's an electric skateboard. How does this work? What is the engineering behind this? Where's the technology coming into play? How does science work? What's the math behind the gear ratios? So they kind of take our platform and make it educational and fun to kind of get kids involved. I wish Jared was still here to talk, because he actually has a partner company that does the same exact thing, but for ages 7 to 12. So he has a company that makes a small kit that he just does elementary and middle schools, and it tries to get them into engineering and stuff like that to kind of educate them and make it fun.
To be fair, it's one thing I've always said with the eSkate scene where we're at now is all this is well and good and exciting with what we're doing, but it's the next generation of what we're doing where we're going to see some really crazy stuff. So I suppose targeting that audience and getting that engagement, getting that curiosity now is key to see what's coming in the future. So I admire that. It's amazing.
I mean, I feel like all us e-skaters are hands-on people. Like, we like to get our hands dirty. We like to touch things. We like to feel things. I'm a hands-on learner, so I learn a lot better when I'm able to touch and feel things. And that's something that I'm proud that I can say I'm helping kids understand things better now. It's something that I kind of struggle with growing up. I had ADHD, ADD. So I was always fidgeting in class, twiddling my thumbs, bumping my knee up and down, just shaking. And I would have teachers tell me to stop, and I'd have teachers tell me to, relax, like act normal, stuff like that. And then I actually had one teacher that was like, you know what, you just need to put your energy into the right place. And
we need to ground you and get you focused. That's all we need.
If you need to doodle, write a little doodle, but then get back to work. If you need to do this, do this. And just having someone come to me with an education setup it felt like it was more intentional to me, or purposeful or personal, made a huge difference in my life. I mean, I'm still talking about it today, and that was 3rd grade or 4th grade.
Yeah. I totally relate to that. Sometimes once again, I love these streams to learn more about a journey. I'm dyslexic, and through one thing for me, and it's kind of sort of tangent, but I think it's relatable to stream, is it was always what I couldn't do, and had that one individual throughout my life who got me focused and say, actually, these are your limitations. This is what you're really good at. You're creative. You're out.
Yeah, everybody's got a superpower.
Yeah, and it's about harnessing that. So I think it's really interesting. It's one thing I'd never considered with BKB. I've supposed to think of it very laterally. Is the strength of an educational tool is amazing, and I think seeing more things like that about supporting next generation, educating people, I think that's an amazing message that you guys are doing, and keeping those fundamentals is great.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we're doing something boring here. This is exciting stuff. We're working in the sports industry, building electric skateboards that go 40 miles an hour. How is that not cool to any kid? And if you're going to talk to a kid about wars or just boring topics that they're not interested in, they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to be excited about the future. If you can give them something to be excited about, if even it's just something, I can go ride this after school, or I can figure out how to build this. It's an honor to me, because I wish I could have had that option as a kid, and I'm passionate about it, so it's fun for me.
Yeah, and I think definitely this scene is all about pushing creativity and passion in people, for sure. And I think, like I said, one thing I was really like seeing about BKB is the fact that it's sparking that curiosity and it's sparking that creativity in people. And I suppose the fact is, it's the kit. It's fundamentally, it's a ground level. It's a kit. It's a baseline to get started in the scene. So I think that's really, really, really cool.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool. Okay, guys. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So please, if you have any additional questions, please put them in now, before we run out of time. So make sure you guys put those questions in before we run out of time. But is there anything, Q, that specifically you want to highlight or talk about, or future plans, future products? Because I know that you obviously looked at the Voyager remote going forward. But is there anything else that you're excited about, or any other things you want to highlight on the stream?
I'm just excited to be here. I want to thank you for allowing me to come on here and have the platform to, talk a little bit, get to know you. I mean, talk to you a little bit more. I really do appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Something I don't get to share often is that just as a business owner, many people don't know this, but Jared and I are the only people within BKB. It's him and it's me. He does the design and manufacturing. So he's working at night and I'm working during the day. So it's one of those things where we're a small company. We're just not two kids, but we're two guys just living out our passions, trying to support as many other people as possible. So we really appreciate the platform to, talk. Thank you. But also, it's one of those things where I want to talk about ESkateCon a little bit. I thought ESkateCon was so gratifying for me. It was my first year there this year. As someone personally who doesn't find fun in social media, who doesn't, for lack of a better term, I'm not a clout chaser. I don't care for the followers, the fame, the likes, or anything like that. I'm there for genuine people, relationships, and supporting those who I can, making products for great people and providing as best value as I can. And ESkateCon really was like it was a certainty in my head. I was obviously having an online only business. It's tough, especially when you're not into these social media things. But ESkateCon was just almost like it lifted me up so high to think, okay, what I'm doing is making a difference. What I'm doing is worthwhile, and I have a community around me. It's tough being on the East Coast of the United States here. There's not many skate groups here. The closest big one we have is New York City, and they don't meet a lot. And some of the guys there, just aren't the nicest because we're the New York hard-headed people. Hey, I'm walking here. You know how it is out here. So it's just one of those things where it's nice to have a community and be a part of it. So thank you. Really appreciate you bringing us in. Thank you.
No, that's all good, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, and I think coming back from ESkateCon, like I said, we're surrounded by this 24/7, but it makes it a bit more real, I suppose, with ESkateCon. And like I said, when you said earlier in the interview, talking to Dallas and people saying like you as part of the team,
made my heart go crazy. I can't even describe how it made me.
You're part of that journey where now they're developing. If there wasn't that engagement, he wouldn't have done YouTube, he wouldn't have done his channel, he wouldn't be racing, he wouldn't be at the ESkateCon, and there's a weird butterfly effect with things. So I suppose it's the start of the wins.
Totally.
Working fun.
I totally agree with you. But I have one question for you, and it was, what did you find on my TikTok? Because I haven't posted on that thing in a long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Have I still got it? It's all. I was going to talk about. I got my TikTok. It's all cast. I'm going to throw going to go off grid a little bit. What's such an interest in the casting? There's one image from BKB on a board. That's it. Done. That's it.
Yeah, I like I said, I was a social media guy at one point. I was not necessarily trying to get a follow. That's my car. I wasn't trying to get a follower or anything like that.
That's a BKB board, yeah?
But yeah, I think you followed me on my personal account as well on Instagram.
Yeah.
I haven't posted in years. It's one of those things where I'm one of the people that if I don't need to be on my phone, I'm not on it. I'm the kind of guy that can lock up my phone for a month and be fine. So I'm not really as engaged on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat as I used to be when I didn't have a business that I was running. If I'm spending any time on social media, usually it's on BKB's account. To be honest with you, that's just what I'm focused on right now. And I have such minimal patience and energy for stuff material things like that, like followers, like accounts and stuff like that. And it doesn't keep my interest. It's kind of a toxic trait to have within business, because how am I supposed to grow a business if I don't want to market? But I like to be genuine.
I think one thing, and I'm going to say this, I think one thing I've noticed for the skate scene, talking to business owners and companies, is especially for smaller businesses, you need every hat in the hat shop with a small-time business: advertising, builds, customer service, support, accounts, everything. It's like people don't appreciate it. So people watching, think about when you're asking these questions, think of these guys are doing every element of the business as individuals, as an evolution, as looking into a field that's only started to become a bit more modernized in the last few years as well.
Yeah. Thankfully, I do have this one platform I use called Reamaze, where if anybody sends me an email, a DM, Facebook message, whatever, it goes to one place, so I'll always see it. I check that twice a day at least, minimum. But I'm always trying to get back to people as soon as possible. That's something we pride ourselves on, is just like customer service as a whole. We try to get back to everybody within 24 hours or less. And it's always coming from me, the CEO, or Jared, the founder. So who better to hear from, right?
Yeah, cool, man. Well, I'm going to wrap up here, guys. I don't think I've got any other questions here. So I'll say Q and Jared, thank you. Obviously, he's not here, but watch your back. But thank you so much for being on the stream. Really appreciate it. And everyone who's watched, thank you very much. I've got a video coming tomorrow of one of the boards I raced at EskateCon. So that'll be going live tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the stream. And if you guys are interested in look at BKB, it will be in the description below. Check it out. And if you're curious about doing, even for me, been doing this for years, I'm super curious at BKB with the building kits. I think it's a great way of getting into something and educating yourself and developing your own knowledge within the scene. So thank you so much for being part of this stream. Cool.
Really appreciate
it. All right, guys. You guys take care.
Awesome.
Peace.
Have a good one, guys.